Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't have nearly enough fun to justify the state of my voice. So I would like you all, please, to trust me when I say this is not entirely self-induced. My name's Chris Curtis. I'm the editor of Broadcast, and it's my pleasure to chair this panel this morning. We're not Steve Coogan, we're not Ben Frau, but we intend to have a lot of fun and hopefully pique your interest around the very topical issue of nations and regions programming. We're going to talk about the sense of momentum that there is around this issue. We're going to unpick some of the opportunities and maybe look at some of the potential pitfalls that might be coming up over the next few years. We're going to do some quick introductions before we dive into the session. So, on my left, on your right, Mark Downie is a former Channel 4 commissioner and boss of Maverick, whose latest challenge is as creative director of IWC. He's been there 4 weeks?
4 weeks, yeah.
4 weeks. And my sense is that perhaps he's trying to restate IWC's sense of Scottishness a little bit, but we'll see whether that's right or not. Next to Mark is Kieran Doherty, who is the joint MD of Stellify Media, a Belfast indie backed by Sony, which has produced some very big entertainment shows in recent years for the likes of BBC One, Channel 5, and now an organisation called Netflix. I don't know, you may have heard of them. Next up, we have Nick Andrews, who is head of commissioning for BBC Wales. He works across television and iPlayer and has a rather smart list of credits, such as Hidden, Keeping Faith and Valley Cops. And finally, to my right, to your stage left, Charles Lauder is the CEO of the Indie Club, which is a new and emerging group that seeks to represent the production community, and it has its origins firmly in the issues of nations and regions production. Thanks for joining us, guys. I wonder if we can start just in a very broad sense. It feels like there's a sense of optimism about TV from the nations and regions at the moment, and I wonder if that is well-founded. Mark, I'm going to come to you with that very broad opener.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, looking at it from a Scottish perspective, there's been talk of this for years, but we finally have action in terms of the BBC moving substantial amounts of money to the nations and regions, Channel 4 following suit, Channel 4 moving, in 3 different ways, parts of their operation to the regions. From a Scottish perspective, we've got our own channel for the first time, and, as part of this festival, Screen Scotland announced a £3 million initiative to support independence in Scotland. The reason I'm here, having worked in in London for 22 years, is I genuinely think there has never been a better time to be a content creator in Scotland. That's why I'm back.
Very good. Kieran, I mean, people don't necessarily associate Belfast and large-scale entertainment shows for the likes of Netflix. That, to me, suggests that perhaps the circumstances that Mark describes are true for you too.
Yeah, I'd say they are. I mean, it does feel like this is a particularly good period of time. Everything seems to be about to happen. And I guess we're just now waiting to see how it all kind of settles down. But it does feel like a great time to be an indie in the nations and regions.
And Charles, to a certain extent, this is where the origin, the sort of genesis of the indie clubs come from, to make sure that we capture this moment.
Yeah, absolutely. What we're looking at is how, as we're aware, there's a review of the criteria for what constitutes made outside London, and that's part of the remit that we're engaged with. And I'm pleased to say that we're talking to the BBC and to Channel 4, and there's a real sense that they're committed to finding a long-term solution to what we all know has been something of an issue in terms of how that has been monitored and indeed adhered to in terms of what constitutes made out London. And for us, it's about revisiting those criteria and kind of refocusing, if you like, on what's the legacy? How do you create a sustainable and robust creative ecology in the regions and nations?
Very good, and we'll spend some time talking about that. And Nick, finally, you work for BBC Wales. Your sense, perhaps, that it feels like there's momentum for you in your part of the BBC as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've had an amazing run this past year. I think 23 million people have now watched either Hidden or Keeping Faith, and that just continues on a super successful drama story for the past number of years. But yeah, it feels very buzzy at the moment within the Welsh sector. Charter Cash has sort of supercharged our commissioning ability to go for shows that have scale and ambition. And I think more than ever before, we're seeing content that we're commissioning in Wales on the network. So yeah, it feels a very exciting time to be in Wales. Yeah.
Very good. I think it's almost impossible not to kick off the discussion with what's going on at Channel 4. So C4 is committed to working towards a voluntary target of 50% of its spend coming outside of London, and it's also committed to a national HQ away from London and 2 other creative hubs, and they're working their way through their shortlisting process to decide what locations they opt for. I wonder if we can talk a little bit, guys, about what Channel 4 needs to do in order to make those hubs, the national HQ, successful, and maybe indeed what success sort of looks like. Mark, I'm going to come to you again first. There's a possibility one of the hubs might be in Glasgow. The national HQ isn't going to be there. We'll talk about location a little bit, but what would be your hope around what Channel 4 might do to make these new bases a success?
It's a great thing that it's finally happening, and I think if you are a producer in any of the nations and regions, one of the difficulties that you will have had over the years is a sort of piecemeal relationship with commissioning editors based in London. And I think at a stroke, by sort of moving people out of London to 3 different sites, it just improves the channel's connectivity, and it will deepen the relationships between the channel's commissioning editors and producers in the region, but also it means they get a great chance to know the production talent better. And I think we've all had that experience where, as a nations and regions producer, you get something commissioned, but the people that you're dealing with at the channel, through no fault of their own, the people that they know in terms of executive producers or series producers or producer directors that they feel comfortable with are people who are based in London, because many of those people at those channels have lived and worked in London all of their life. And this is an opportunity for, Channel 4 people to come to different parts of the UK, to live there, to get to know our talent. It's not a day trip, it's not an initiative, and that, hopefully, that era of a kind of bitty relationship with sort of producers in the nations and regions will come to an end.
Does it matter in terms of number of commissioners that they move versus how senior those commissioners are? But there are interesting nuances to this whole project.
Absolutely. I think what we all want is commissioning editors who are empowered and have a serious amount of money to spend, where they have creative autonomy. What none of us want is another layer of commissioning that gets between us and the nations and regions and things being greenlit. And I actually think this is amazing. As somebody who worked at Channel 4 for 3.5 years, this is one of the most profound changes to the structure of Channel 4 that it's ever had. And as an organisation, it's a great opportunity. I mean, I was at the leaders' debate the other day. We're looking at the length of time it takes for channels to make decisions. Channel 4 has fallen way behind. Channel 5 is the leader. And if I, was at Channel 4 just now, I'd be thinking, we need to get back to where we were. We used to be the small, agile broadcaster that was going against the grain and doing things differently and moving more quickly and saying yes fast. It's fallen behind when it comes to that. But if you put people in place who are properly empowered, who know all the best talent in the country and have a better, closer relationship with the production companies, and crucially know the audiences across the UK and all of their diversity better, that's really good for Channel 4 as well as being good for us.
Very good. Kieran, I'll ask you next as the other nations and regions producer on the panel. What would be your sort of hopes and expectations? I mean, it's significant. I don't know. You tell me. Belfast had bid. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be in Belfast. No. Does it therefore mean that if they end up in Birmingham or Leeds, that's relevant to you guys or not?
Well, yeah, I mean, you're right, we bid. They came over, it was a good process, it was a good bid. I would say that, obviously, but it was a good bid. wherever they go, we're going to follow them. That's just basically how it works. So if they're in London, where they're now, if they go to Glasgow, wherever it ends up, we're all going to chase it because we're all chasing the money, effectively. It's a shame they didn't come. It would have been transformative to the sector, but I agree, wherever they end up, it's how it's empowered. Because what you don't want is somebody who is removed from the centre of decision making and put into a region, and then that is one more layer, because that's how it all falls apart.
And is that empowerment around things like, I don't know, ring-fenced hours or ring-fenced money, or is it around cultural change, would you say?
It can be, I mean, this is the thing that's going to have to shake down. It can be around any number of things, but what it has to be is a properly built. I keep coming back to the person who was meant to be here today was just Sean Doyle. We always keep coming back to Sean Doyle, who's at 5, who lives in Belfast but works out of London, and the amount of commissioning he's done through the Belfast and Northern Ireland, and that's just because he's based in Northern Ireland. And like you say, he knows the companies. This is not a hard thing to solve, not really, because Channel 5 are doing it because Sean happens to live. Everything we're trying to create now, Sean is doing because he lives in Belfast, and so we've seen Northern Ireland change because a commissioner lives in that area and knows the team. So it's not a very hard thing to fix. It just has to be set up properly. Sean does not have a remit for Northern Ireland. He's just a commissioner. Yeah. And we pitch him, and we pitch other people at 5. But you can see how Channel 5, Blind Date, Gino, all this different stuff, that's been transformative because it was done correctly, I think.
Very good. Nick, I wonder, you're BBC Commissioner, you're based in Wales. What would you say to your counterparts at Channel 4 once everything shakes down? People are going to move, either be recruited into new roles based outside of London or move from London into commissioning roles outside of the capital. What would your advice be to them about how they need to go about integrating with the local production communities?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can agree with what's been said so far. I can speak for my own experience. You know, I've got a team who've got a network track record as long as anyone's, and we are plugged into the network's vision and commissioning steers and all the rest of it. And so what I would say to anyone setting up in Wales is, Wales is a vibrant sector right now. There's plenty of superb companies. A good indigenous sector already in place, but I think they do need to have what I've got is complete autonomy and commissioning power and spend that I can make decisions quickly, and also what it means is that they have that autonomy that was alluded to, which is also really important. I just don't think indies have the time to spend a huge amount of development spend and time on projects that then don't get commissioned. So I think one of the things that we do as a team is quick yeses, quick nos, and we're fleet of foot. So that would be, that's something we do in the BBC Wales commissioning team, and that's probably what they should be doing too. Indeed.
The slight difference is, to a certain extent, you're commissioning for BBC Wales, and with a view to trying to get those shows onto network where you deem it strategically appropriate, and you think there's a piece of content that could work. C4 obviously doesn't have that multi-channel sort of operation in that way, and those commissioners based outside of London will be looking for ideas for main channel. Your experience then about working with network, you've had some success in recent times. That's about what, making sure that you're plugged in as well to networks requirements, and perhaps that was a model that the C4 guys based outside London need to make sure that they're in line with the strategy coming from London.
Yeah, we're commissioning big, bold, ambitious ideas that are going to cut through on any channel, and up to 80% of our commissions are now getting on the network. So what we're doing is we have quite a bullish attitude about it. We want to be creating cool content, telling stories about Wales that are universal, actually, a lot of them, and then they're so good that they're landing on iPlayer and flying regardless of other money or other network decisions or whatever. And I would just say that really what the success for Wales has been about looking at the sector, empowering them with reinvestment cash and development spend and quick decisions, and the dividends being that we've had real breakthrough both on iPlayer and on BBC One Wales and pick up at network. So it's an exciting time because we're being super pragmatic about what we can do.
There's a balance there, isn't there, between, because you're looking to commission ideas which speak to Wales and are Welsh and have that front and centre, and yet you talked about universal themes, and that's an interesting creative balance to strike.
Yeah, I mean, so Valley Cops is a really good example. You know, it was a police show, it was a cop show, but the unique Welsh angle to it was that a lot of people grow up. A lot of the police officers grew up with the criminals, so that cops and robbers actually knew each other, were often related, and that was the unique space that series took on, and it was executed superbly. So it's universal in that it's a cop show, but it's hyper local and specific because of that unique relationship between the crims and the police. That's what we're after, and then that's how our shows are going to end up on network.
Very good. And Charles, for you, from the Indie Club's perspective, what would your hopes, your aspirations be for the Channel 4 strategy in terms of what it might achieve for producers outside of London?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that, like everybody else has said here, that we welcome the fact that it's happening. The other thing was, I think that, picking up on what Mark said earlier, was I was absolutely heartened to hear Ian Cant say that what they weren't going to do was have a specific commissioner in this place and a specific commissioner, but that you'd have commissioning for all of the different genres in each hub, so that you don't end up doing what's been happening, where everybody has to make pilgrimage to wherever. So I think that's a really positive step. I think the other thing is about the Indie Club. It will be in a position to support Channel 4 in terms of how you build that legacy and how you make that connectivity with the local talent, for want of a better term. That whole sense of that's what you achieve, that's how you'll achieve authenticity in programme making, because the people who are making the decisions about what works aren't kind of parachuted in and sort of layering their perspective, so that the folk from that area watch the programmes that they see and kind of go, well, that's not us. I mean, I was really taken with, in the kind of future talent session, listening to Grace V saying that part of the reason she started her blogging, what have you, was she was watching telly and seeing nobody that looked like her making the kind of work that mattered to her. And I think that's a really important thing for us to focus on when we're looking at what are the outcomes. Because for me, part of the success will be when someone like Grace doesn't say something like that.
Mm-hmm. So there's an element to which, for Channel 4, for the BBC, for any broadcaster that's embracing nations and regions, one of the measures of success will be when people think the output has changed here, the programming has changed, that whether consciously or unconsciously, they're able to notice a shift in the programming that's being created.
And that will come when you've got sustainable ecologies in the regions and nations, because the people making the shows and finding access to the commissioners will be people who are part of that locale, will be people who know that community and are in their storytelling. That's what we're doing here, we're telling stories, and their storytelling will be authentic. But you have to have that sustainable ecology. And I think that we also should face that it isn't going to be immediately easy in some of those instances, because what's been happening with the kind of drain of talent, if we can call it that, to London, is there's been a degree of hollowing out in some of those areas. So there's going to have to be some investment in building that up. Again, that's part of what I think those independent producers that are on site can do. They know where the talent actually is, but they'll also know where the gaps are that need to be focused on in order to rebuild.
Okay, we'll come to talent in just a moment. I'm going to stay with you, Charles, because I wanted to talk about spending and the sort of more quota-led side of things. There's a debate at the moment. Ofcom is basically trying to work out whether it should refine or shake up the criteria by which it deems a programme to be a nations and regions programme or not. Yeah. I don't want to get too. There are three criteria. I don't want to get too granular up on stage. But why does it matter about what those criteria are and if they are refined or not? What's at the heart of the issue?
I think we already touched on it, and I'll come back to it. So the risk of kind of bang, bang, bang. It is about sustainability, and sustainability, therefore, equates to job creation. It's about people being able to feel that, look, you should go to London if that's what you want to do. that ought not to be an issue. But if you want to stay in your area and build a career, it ought not to be that you can't do that because there isn't enough work and because there isn't enough understanding of what it is to live in that place and care about that place. So for me, that's part of it. It's about saying that, and thankfully we're already having conversations with Ofcom, and one of the things that they're coming up to Salford on the 10th of September, which is the Indie Club official launch party. If you haven't got your ticket, it's pretty hot, so get in quick. And I'm pleased to say, incidentally, that Ben, absolutely luxuriating in his kind of channel of the year, is key speaker at that event. But on that same day, at our invitation, Ofcom will be in Media City, talking to indies about what it is that is required in order for us to start looking seriously at what constitutes made outside London. And I think we started out, Cat Luce is sitting here, has been absolutely punching through on this for I don't know how many years, unbelievably indefatigable. But the conversation that we started out with was about, let's look at refining the criteria. And then after further conversation, we kind of went, you know what? How about if, for the moment, we kind of go, park them, don't dismiss them, but park them, and start with the outcome in mind. If we were doing this, what were the things we'd like to look at, especially armed with what we know of what's gone on to date? And that's where we came to that thing about legacy. Now, once you've determined what it is that constitutes legacy, and I think there's about investment, it's about job creation, it's about where post is done, it's about what you're engaging in pre, because that's when you start having people staying there, because that's where the work is. Someone said before, we follow the money. Of course we do. So if you can have a sustainable career, then the talent will come because they'll find somewhere where they can build their lives.
Yeah.
And you know, listen, it might be interesting, there may be some people who are in London who might think it's quite interesting to go to somewhere where it's not a 90-minute commute to get to work, where there is a vague chance that your children will be able to afford their own homes before they're 50. Some people might consider that a worthwhile quality of life move to make.
Well, you say that, Charles, but my tactic of winning the lottery actually is also very sustainable as well. Nick, for you, look, there is a bit of a gap at the moment between PACT and the Indie Club on one side, saying they think that the criteria should be looked at and rejigged. The various different PSBs have actually said they think they should remain in place in terms of giving them the PSB some creative sort of flexibility. I'm not going to ask you to speak on behalf of the BBC on that issue. I don't think that's not your requirement. But I do wonder. You know, we're talking about issues like where the post is done. Whether the indie has a substantive base or not. If an indie pitches to you, a non-indigenous indie, and they've got a Welsh office, does it matter to you what that Welsh office looks like and how real and robust that Welsh office is?
Yeah, how big the plaque is.
How big the plaque is.
So there's an inevitable tension. You know, I want to make world-class, I want to commission world-class content, I need to be working with the best people. Sometimes they're not in Wales. So there's some pragmatic decisions that we're making all the time. But actually, gone are the days where the sector in Wales, across Wales, isn't good enough. I mean, how deeply patronising and colonial almost to suggest it's not good enough. So when we get extraordinary ideas coming in, we just say, right, how can we get this made? How can we do this? Who can we work with? What partnerships can we forge to make sure that it's rooted in Wales, but we're also getting a crack unit of people around it to produce world-class content? Because at the end of the day, in the current marketplace, if your show is rubbish, it doesn't matter. You know, if no one's watching it, it's a race to the bottom. So we are in Wales as a commissioning team super pragmatic about it, but the Welsh qualifying thing is deeply important because the Welsh sector is a sector that I defend, I fight for. So we find that we are proactively talking from the very beginning with people about who's going to make it, where is it going to be cut. If it's not been cut in Cardiff, why not? And
Are you able to, or have you succeeded where someone says, "Oh, we'll come, we'll make our show, and then we'll head back off down the M4, thank you very much, and head to Soho for the offline and the online"? Are you able to sort of ease people into maybe doing the posting?
Because money's a fantastic leverage, and I get quite angry.
But by that you mean this is a requirement of the commission.
In some instances, I'm afraid we live in a new era in Wales, and actually we're quite angry about these things now, and we would like you to work and create your magic here in Wales, given the fact that you're telling stories about Welsh people. So at the very least you could be, but it's not just about, as you alluded, it's not just about parachuting people in. That's like uncool. So we've just got to be pragmatic, work with the best people we can, and it's all about partnerships. And that's why I think the commissioning team within Wales right now is one of the most collaborative in the nation.
Very good. I'm going to come to you guys now. Actually, before I come to you, Mark, Kieran, you make big entertainment shows. I don't think there's a studio in Northern Ireland that you could make those shows in.
There isn't. There are studios. There's lots of sound stages. Drama,
Thrones, and all sorts of things. It's been incredibly transformative for Northern Ireland. But for the type of genre that you specialise in,
we can't make. We have some small studios where we do lots of current affairs. As you can imagine, in Northern Ireland there's lots of current affairs, lots of panel shows where we talk about current affairs, but not very much game show. It's just been the nature of it. So if we're going to make a game show, we have to go somewhere else. But pre and post, where possible, we would always try and do it at home anyway. But with Millionaire, we were in Manchester. With Blind Date, London. It just doesn't exist. And when it doesn't exist, there's not a lot you can do about it.
There are practical barriers, right?
I mean, exactly.
With the best one in the world, you'd see.
But everybody in Northern Ireland, when you get your commission, you try to keep it. Because we're all obsessed with growing the sector and retaining talent, and we share information when we have people now, which is nice. That if you're finished on a gig with us, we will phone up the other indies and go, this person will go to... Not that there's anything wrong with going to London, as we say, you should definitely do it, but once they leave, they're gone. Because they've got to make a commitment to live somewhere else, and then they're not coming back anytime soon. And then it's not a penalty as such, but there is a tax to making the type of shows we make in the regions and the nations, because we have to fly in the talent because they're not there. Then there's hotels, there's the per diems. It's more expensive to make the same show if you're a nations and regions producer, because you have that hanging on you essentially.
Yeah.
But it's changing. In Northern Ireland at the minute, we've got great crews. Every time we make something, we try to keep the crews, find the best people, but try and make sure we're bringing local people with us. And it's changing. Everything is actually changing, but currently there is no studio, so that won't change.
No, indeed. Mark, from your perspective, I mean, IWC, a factual, sort of popular factual indie in Scotland, where there has been a base of that kind of programming for a long period of time. What's your take on these kind of issues?
I mean, to be personal for a moment, when I was 24, I remember my last appraisal at BBC Scotland, and my boss looked me in the eyes and held me by the shoulder and said, what you need to do is go to London. If you're going to get on, it's time to go to London. That's what I did. That's what you should do.
I think he did my appraisal too, actually.
and mine, as it goes, yeah.
And that was true at that time, but that has changed. And at the moment, I'm recruiting, and so I'm looking through lots of CVs of people in Glasgow, and CVs have been transformed over that 20 years. If you've been working in Glasgow for the last 5 years or 10 years or 15 years even, you have CVs that have an extraordinary range of things on them, because we're now doing high-end drama, we've got a soap opera, we've got Saturday night entertainment coming out of Scotland in high volumes, specialist factual, documentaries, arts, popular factual. What you see in Glasgow in particular is a really interesting range of things in a CV, and I think that's really good. If you're making programmes in Scotland, in a range of genres, but it's really, really good for the production community as well. And having spent a long time in London, you would quite often see CVs of people in their early 30s, and you looked at their CV and they'd just done the same thing over and over again. Rig show, or a whole series of medical shows. And there was a lack of, just because so many companies, I think because of the proliferation of indies, particularly in London, to survive an increasing number of companies are specialising.
Yeah.
And what's great to see is the kind of diversity of talent in Scotland when it comes to the range of things that people can do, which kind of future-proofs them. So if a genre goes out of fashion, you know, they'll still be able to get work because we're doing a whole range of other things in the city too.
That's very positive. There's an element, though, to which that's become possible in Scotland, where perhaps other parts of the UK, where people talk about the idea of retaining talent and having a meaningful career there, where it is harder, where you really are thinking, where's my next gig coming from? If you're an AP or whatever it might be.
Absolutely, and I think it's, you know, there's 3 indies in this panel here who are the real deal. You know, we are genuinely of the nations and regions that we come from, and you know, all of us will be doing the same thing, which is when you have we're very fortunate to have a number of returning series. The money that comes from that in profit, we invest heavily in development because we want to create more returnable series, which means that we can retain that talent. One of the things that's really struck me in Scotland is how often when you look at a CV, you see proper training on it in a way that I saw very, very rarely in London. And I think we care more about wanting that talent to be able to stay, and if they need a bit of help and assistance to get to the next stage as an SP or an exec, we will invest in them and pay for the training to help them get that step up. Whereas my experience of London is often it's such a kick bollock scramble. You know, you finish on a Friday, you start something new on a Monday, and there's a kind of frenzy for, you know, we need to get somebody, we just need to get them started. That people go from contract to contract, often without having any training at all. So there's real advantages to working here.
Kieran, can I ask you, off-screen talent, can I ask you to assess the pool of off-screen talent in Northern Ireland? You know, and not to try and put you on the spot, but it's interesting, right? This notion that you'll want to employ local people, but you want your show to be as fantastic as it can be. There's a bit of a perception. Maybe it's a myth that there is insufficient talent in some parts of the UK to make high-quality shows. What's your assessment of the talent situation in Northern Ireland?
Northern Ireland is rammed full of talent. Now, of course I would say that, but it genuinely is across multiple genres. The type of work that we do, sort of Saturday night studio, is a rarefied space anyway. So at the top end of that, you can really only employ people who have done it before, because the channels need to have the security of knowing that, you know, it's not a first-time director doing Blind Date or Millionaire, but then you build your team around, because everybody's capable. You know, it's not there's nothing rocket science about what we do for a living, not really. And when you put the right team at the top, everybody goes up with them. And the ambition is obviously, of course, as they move on to their other gigs, the people that were beneath them step up into other roles and move up. We also have, and I think they're in the room today, we've got NI Screen, which is the most amazing screen agency in any of the nations and regions. And so the training that they provide and the help that they give everyone is, I'd say, second to none. And then within the indies themselves, Stellify, we train people up, we put them on courses, we actively promote within the company so that they're getting to step up, we have them shadow. But entertainment is difficult because there's not enough of it. There's not enough of it anywhere, really. You know, I'd love there to be more. But outside of that, if you're a researcher or an AP or a production coordinator, you know, you're as good as anyone. And now you're getting good gigs in the regions and the nations, so your CV's shooting up as well, which is nice.
I totally agree. And the devolved governments, you know, really get this in Northern Ireland and in Wales, in Scotland, in a way that the Westminster government in England doesn't. I think English indies are being let down by the lack of care and concern about this issue. You know, the devolved governments are much more kind of fleet of foot and assertive when it comes to all of this.
Okay, very good. I'd like to talk a little bit about one of the effects of the nations and regions changes that are going on at the moment, which is for big established London groups, super indie labels, to set up satellite offices. And I wonder whether, because they, like everyone, are going to follow the money. If Channel 4 are going to spend 50% of their money outside of London, then those companies will want to be part of that. Is that a threat to what we might call indigenous nations and regions companies?
I think it is potentially. I mean, it's not without some benefits in that, you know, Scotland didn't have much of a tradition of, you know, Saturday night entertainment producing up until a few years ago. You know, people came up here, people are trained up as a result of that. You know, and some of those businesses, some of those individuals stay on, and it broadens the talent base. But yeah, I mean, as you know, as a genuine indie based in Scotland, we would much rather that commissioners were applying those Ofcom guidelines, which is what we're guided by at the moment, accurately and fairly, and you know, that they were properly policed, that nobody is turning a blind eye to those guidelines and trying to kind of bend and distort them, you know, and similarly with the channels, you know, I have worked at London Indies where, you know, you work incredibly hard to get a commission, and then you work incredibly hard to get the money right, and it's never quite enough, and then at the last minute the broadcaster will say to you, can you make it out of Wales? And you're like, well, we are, you know, a small indie who's based in London. We do not have a substantive base in Cardiff or Scotland or anywhere else. We actually don't know anybody in Cardiff or where, you know, or anybody else. It's not fair to put that extra hurdle in the way of an indie. You know, that kind of thinking looks good in the broadcaster's spreadsheet, but it goes absolutely against the spirit of what, you know, we want to do as indies, and actually what the broadcasters want to do in their heart, which is sustainably grow the production community in the nations and regions, and give voice to those parts of the community and broaden the skill base.
Because this kind of thing happens all the time, right? You know, on when you have private conversations with people, you hear about big shows being ordered,
yeah.
and they're an idea. It's not that they're a London idea as opposed to a Welsh idea or a Northern England idea. They're simply an idea that goes through the process, blah, 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 and then the suggestion is make it in another part of the UK. Charles, does that sort of thing bother you? Does it? Because
it has to. Put bluntly, exactly as Mark has said, and I think that's why we're talking more about this idea of what's the sustainable legacy. Because if all you're going to do is just transplant people every time and move the caravan around, there's nothing left behind. And the point of the exercise is that if you want that authenticity, if you want the stories being told by the people who know, you can't have a caravan that just keeps moving around depending on where the money goes. And I think the other thing about that is that there's 85% of the population that isn't in London. In any other set of circumstances, no one would dream of putting together a business plan that said, ignore 85% of your talent pool. It wouldn't make any kind of sense. And so for us, that's why we consistently talk about, yes, there is some flexibility that be required, and you were talking about that earlier, about saying, okay, if that kind of expertise isn't here. But if you've got a range of things that relate to legacy, what you might say is we'll parlay that against more of this, or we'll say if that talent isn't there at the moment, how do you, in putting your product together, your content together, start investing with us in ensuring that the next time around that gap isn't there. And I think that the flexibility is there. Look, we're creative people. We can come up with creative solutions to an issue that we believe requires solution. That's one of the reasons why at the moment we're talking with BBC and Channel 4 about putting together a cross-broadcaster and independent working party to kind of go, what's the outcome we're looking for? And how do we together find the solutions that will take us to that outcome? And yes, there's going to be some friction and some push and pull on the way. But if we genuinely, and that's the sense that we're getting, is that the broadcasters genuinely want to get this fixed. Then let's put that effort into something that's realistic. And I'm entirely convinced that if broadcasters and indies come together and kind of go, here's how it'll work, here's how we'll monitor it, if you put it in, for example, in the same kind of route that you do with compliance. So that it's not something that's grafted on, it's separate, and then you suddenly do the kickball scramble thing, oh God, how to get it to qualify at the last minute, and then go, oh, do it in Cardiff or do it in Bristol or whatever, that'll help us. If you did it in that manner, you would have something that's not only sustainable, but it would be beneficial to all concerned. And look, I'd hate for us to get to the position where, at the moment, we talk about how fantastic UK television is, best in the world, etc., etc. I'd hate for us to get to the place that footy got to, where we're talking about it and it's 25 years ago. And the way we do that is by engaging with the talent that's here now and building where there isn't the kind of talent that we want, by doing the training, by doing the investing, and by spending the time, because it's in our benefit.
Nick, I wonder if I can come to you and ask you, you had an experience, I think, working with the Bristol branch of Wall to Wall. I wonder if you can talk to us a little bit about how that worked and why that was an interesting experience.
Yeah, it's a good example. So we wanted to do some living history, and within Wales, I think the last time we did living history was 2008. So you know, we had a whole bunch of ideas come in, and Wall to Wall West had an amazing idea about taking a factory back in time and setting it in the valleys, and it being the story of women in manufacturing, and it was brilliant, and it was going to be exec'd by their team and so on. So so the conversation begins, the negotiations begin. You know, if this is where my head is at, I want my shows to be smash hits on iPlayer and on Network and on BBC One Wales. How am I going to do that? How am I going to get this Welsh story told to the largest number of people possible? Okay, I'll get it on Network by working with these specialists. Living history, a particular thing. Fine, that's great. I meet the specialists. There are a couple of rules. You're going to have to cut it in Cardiff. You're going to have to use the following APs who are looking for their next gig in television that could be a network gig. They're fed up of being deemed local talent. In fact, we banned the term local. We're nation. Okay. Well, you know. So, and also, you're going to have to cut it and dub it. And oh, by the way, we'll have veto on who presents this. So, my money and network money come in to fund a show that's going to be huge. And Patrick mentioned it the other day. It feels like a really good approach for living history. It's not one size fits all for that particular idea. And you know, what do we get back? Oh, the editors in Wales are fantastic. The APs are really, by the way, the APs are really good in Wales.
Who knew?
Who knew? It's so weird.
We did.
It's so weird, yeah. So weird. So that's and I'm trying to replicate that in genres, you know, across the board. So yeah, for me that's a really good example of how we can all pull together, as you were saying, and make something that cuts through.
Very good. Kieran, I'd like to ask you if a whole load, so some of the big boys are opening offices, so the big indie groups are opening offices in Northern Ireland.
Oh, I know. I've noticed.
So, is that a threat because competition gets greater, or an opportunity because they're going to potentially be a more substantive talent base in the area?
This is a fascinating thing because it sort of swings continually, right? It's 100% a threat to my business, Stellify, but it is not a threat to the sector. It's great. If I was starting out and Endemol were in Northern Ireland, I'd be banging on the door trying to get a job. It meant I wouldn't have to go to London, which I didn't do in the end, to be fair. But you're not, if they're there and they're there properly and they're bedded in and it's a real company and it's doing real business, then I'm, you know, as Stellify, when they arrive, I'm thinking, oh, right, here we go. That's, you know, here comes trouble. But as a human being, as somebody who knew what it was like trying to build a career in Northern Ireland, couldn't leave, started a career late, 27 when I started, couldn't afford to go to London, had, you know, stuff in Belfast that I couldn't leave. If those companies were in Belfast and were legit, that's great for our sector. I mean, I'm missing the staff that those companies would train. And so, while when you ask different indies, sometimes they go, yeah, it should be Indigenous indies that get because that's what it's meant to be. But if they come and they're proper, then they are Indigenous. You know, just because they weren't born there doesn't mean they can't come there. You know, what are you going to turn them away at the port? No. Let me hear your accent. You have to leave.
Getting dangerously close to Brexit politics.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because
perhaps we'll move on. The other thing I wanted to ask you about a little bit, and it'd be interesting to hear the views across the panel, is the idea of sort of ghettoisation. So the idea at which, you know, that Stellify is a Northern Ireland production company, because the shows you are best known for, I'll be brutally honest, have nothing to do with Northern Ireland or indeed any location, because Blind Date is a universal show, or Wish List, or the entertainment show that you made for BBC One, Can't Touch This, that you were a Netflix commission. Netflix are not interested in. Well, that show is not about telling Indigenous Northern Ireland stories. Do you like to be thought of as a Northern Ireland indie, or does it hold you back?
No, but I am a Northern Irish indie. I mean, that's just it. But the shows, if I was making documentaries about Northern Ireland, then you could go, you know, you're telling those Northern Irish stories, but I don't, I make entertainment. And so you can't make a Northern Irish entertainment show. I don't know what that would look like. So we create formats and we build shows, and where possible, we make those shows in Northern Ireland and we try to grow the talent base. Can't Touch This was our first commission when we first came out, and it was the big physical game show. We made it in Belfast. We couldn't do Blind Date, Wishlist or Millionaire there because we didn't have a studio, but we did do the Channel 5 show in Solitary there because it was effectively a barn. And then the Wishlist show is also made in Northern Ireland. Or sorry, Wishlist. Netflix, imagine forgetting that name. The Netflix show is also made in Northern Ireland. So where we can, we do. And those are 90% crewed by local people who I know are able to do the job. Some of the, as I said before, the higher end of it, where you need those specialist skills, we fly those in at our own, and that costs more. You know, it's like you have to do that. Yeah. But if those shows come back year on year, and you have to hope, then everybody's sort of moving up the chain just a little bit, and it won't happen quickly. But if we're all pushing in the right direction, then in a few years' time, it will be significantly different.
Mark, at the beginning of the session, I sort of half tongue-in-cheek said that you were trying to reassert IWC's Scottishness. I mean, is that the case, and why is it important? And do you need to be careful that you're not just or only thought of as a Scottish production company? Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Kieran. You know, we're very much a Scottish indie. You know, the vast majority of our staff are Scottish, but our canvas has always been the whole of the UK, and we want that to continue. You know, if you look at Location, 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 which is one of our shows, I think most of the audience don't know that that's a Scottish show, and that's absolutely fine. Similarly, Britain's Most Historic Towns, which we make for Channel 4, which plays on Saturday evenings, most of the historic towns that we feature are in England, and we're incredibly happy with that. I mean, I think the joy of the situation that we have at the moment is when an idea is commissioned from us or any of these indies, we know that it has been commissioned entirely on merit. You know, that is the best idea in that genre at that time in the UK, and we want that to continue. We don't want, you know, it is great that the playing field is finally being levelled, so that, you know, other parts of the country don't have an unfair advantage. But I don't want any special treatment. I don't ever want to think, oh, this idea is just being commissioned from them because we had to, because it was Scotland. That's the absolute opposite of what all of us want. And, you know, the creative competition that we have in this country is a very positive thing, because it means that it's good for audiences. It means that the best ideas get onto telly every time. So your development team isn't sitting there thinking about ideas through the idea of a muck prism? Definitely not. Definitely not. But similarly, you know, I mean, I think what is absolutely, and you know, I think if you're Scottish, you know, you get how it works. You know, you are in the country of Scotland, but we are part of the United Kingdom, and we are part of Europe. You know, we always want to be outward looking. We don't want to be inward looking. And you know, if you're dealing with, you know, Netflix, they don't care where you're based. They just want really, really good ideas. And, you know, I think we're getting to a position where British broadcasters are kind of moving to that way of thinking. You know, we've had a process in the UK of political devolution to the various nations, and then, you know, in recent years, civic devolution, where at long last our cities, Manchester and Leeds and Bristol, are finally being empowered. Telly thinks of itself as a progressive industry, but I think it's come quite late to this way of thinking. And I think what we're all after is a sort of federal system which is fairer, where, you know, the people that live within, you know, walking distance of Channel 4 aren't given a special advantage for being handy. When I started out in TV, the way people used to talk about being a nation, or being an indie from Belfast, for instance, was that you had to make it seem like you were just down the road from the commissioners. Yeah. They had to make it seem like they couldn't look at you like, oh my God, you sound strange, where are you from? They had to believe that they were like anybody else. You could bump into them in the pub. And then as the years have progressed, we've all tended to go, but this is what makes us different. So we stand out because we're not in London. We have no idea what goes on in London because we're based somewhere else. We bring different ideas and different viewpoints to it. And so we started to embrace it. And then at the other end, so we think of ourselves as this kind of, we do big shows, we do formats, they could be from anywhere, it just happens to be us. But it's our particular slant on it that makes them, we think, sell. And it gets to the point where people refer to us as the Irish fellas.
Those two Irish guys. Matt's from Leamington Spa. So the brand is really stuck, you know. And every time they go, those Irish guys, I just go, shh, don't say anything, because this is now the brand, you know. When we work in America and anywhere else, and so that becomes a badge, you know. And you get to see, you seem different because you are different, and you've embraced your, you know.
Interesting, Charles.
I think there's just something I'd like to throw into the room. When does ghetto become niche? I'll just leave that there for a moment. And the other thing I'd say is this thing that actually having a different view because you've been brought up differently, because you see the world differently, has a place. The storytelling is still the key. Do you tell a good story? Does it make sense? And are people attracted to it? But I doubt that a lot of people would look at what they see on, for example, YouTube and kind of go, oh, because it's come from person X in location Y, I'm not interested, I'm not going to watch. If it's interesting, you'll be getting it from a slightly different perspective. And a multiplicity of voices is what will... What was it that Shane Allen said? We're engaged by the stories that have not yet been told and the voices not yet heard. I wish that wasn't just a strategic statement, but was actually a reality in terms of how we go about what we're doing. Because until that multiplicity of voices is there, the Grace V thing will still apply. I'll look at it and kind of go, doesn't look like me, doesn't represent me, I'm not interested, I'm going to take my attitude and my attention somewhere else. So I think we've got to be careful about this thing about everything is universal. I grew up differently from other people on this panel. I see the world differently from other people on this panel. That's neither a good thing nor a bad thing. But when we all come together, exchanging those differing views, we get a really rich mix and a really rich picture. That should be what the content that we're seeking to achieve, because that's what the audiences are demanding.
It's funny, in Wales, it's the most normal thing in the world to flip between Welsh and English. And so you and I might be having a chat. A Welsh speaker will come in, I'll say yes to a cup of tea in Welsh, and we'll turn... within someone said, incredible, how the Welsh language really plays to that Scandi-noir thing. And so it's the most normal thing.
What's Welsh for bollocks?
And you end. Oh, I'll tell you after. But you know, so we work with S4C and create just an amazing story, and it's based in Wales. And by the way, we happen to speak Welsh and English. It's the most normal thing in the world. Elsewhere, it's like a genre-specific thing. It's part of the Scandi-noir movement. It's not. It's just how we roll.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Very good.
It's good storytelling.
We have got about 5 minutes left. I have some questions on the app, but I also am perfectly happy to take questions from the floor as well. And I can see a few hands up. So I don't know, would you just like to say who you are and what your question is? And then, do I have one? Yeah.
Okay, I'm Claire Ingham. I run a company called Red Room Films based in Derbyshire. And it's a recent opening of the company because for the last God knows how many years I've been on the train to London and I've lived down there all week and I've come back home at weekends, so making my living in drama that way. I was lucky enough to start off my training at Granada and then work at Central, so I kind of had that regional background, and it feels like a good time to move back now. But I wonder, in some ways I think for the nations, it's a little bit easier in that you can identify yourselves very clearly. And I wonder how you think it's going to work for England, in that, you know, things are kind of based around cities, but there is a danger of things being kind of carved up by counties that aren't quite, you know, a sort of one sort of character. So in Derbyshire, you know, I live in the East Midlands, but my nearest big town is Birmingham, which is West Midlands. You know, I'm originally from Manchester, you know, so I'm from the Northwest. So do you carve it up by county? Do you carve it up by city? Do you just say, well, England has a character of its own, which I say to producers is not true. You know, when I say to a producer, what accent is that cast member using? And the producer says nervously, General Northern. I'm sorry,